Let me introduce you to our first speaker, Rajlakshmi TELI. Rajlakshmi is a dynamic architect who intertwines her fervor for architecture, sustainability, and social equity. Graduating from Siagat College, Pune with honors and the coveted Nyasa Thesis Prize, she embarked on a multifaceted journey. Beyond academia, she delved into filmmaking and ecological conservation, augmenting her connection with nature. Guided by architect Rahul Rawat, she practiced independently before expanding her horizons with a master's in urban planning from Columbia University, specializing in economic development and recognized with the Charles Abram Award for Social Justice. Her path led her to impactful community collaborations with waste picker collectives, yielding innovative solutions for Pune's informal settlements. A transformative pause fueled her cycling passion and birthed her own practice, fractal chaos design. With global experiences, including woodworking in France and documentary making, she now leaves her mark through construction experiments and nurturing skilled teams, channeling her mission of empowerment. May I invite Rajlakshmi to join us on the stage and share her journey.
Good evening, everyone. So, the journey, this presentation or this sharing is about of putting pen to paper. When I'm putting pen to paper, I am trying to search for truth, which revolves around objects, economics, politics, environment, the soul, the human, space, Vitruvian principles of strength, functionality, beauty. And then I added some 3 more, cost, climate, and psychology. This presentation is an offering to all my gurus along the way, my grandparents who taught me the value of being authentic, architect Rahul Rawat who made me understand the importance of construction sequence and learning in depth about materials, architect Girish Doshi who taught that being a good human is more important than being a great professional, Takami Kawai, a Japanese master carpenter whose passion about working with wood told me that wood is alive even after it is cut. And Dr. Smita Srinivas, my thesis guide during my master's studies, who inspired multidisciplinary thinking processes in my designs. After architectural studies, I was left with a lot of questions that the world around me was more than just the boundaries set by architecture. So I thought about whether I should do filmmaking, whether I should should just quit architecture and study policy, or do some hands-on work and develop some skills, or go completely into ecological conservation, or maybe do some work to influence societal change. Why, how, so? I did not want to be comfortable. For me, survival was finding answers to my questions. And so the journey that I'm going to be sharing today is that of a rebel who then delved into theories and research and wanted to apply them, and then became very spontaneous in her processes. And then there was a big pause, which led to even more slow processes, more absorbed and more conscientious processes in the designs. There was the blurring of the ego, and each path led to the understanding of my spirit more. So the rebel. About 15 years ago, I had this romantic concept for expecting corporates to sit on reused steel plates. And so this interior was for a corporate office, and the client obviously was working with machines. And so I thought, why not use just the metal lying in the workshop and use it in the interiors, and let just concrete be the background, and expect visitors to sit on this furniture made from scrap. It seemed like an art installation, except for some really nice music in the background, and obviously this didn't work out. And then followed the urban furniture experiment that again found life lasting for a day. When I was doing my master's, one old lady, she came up to me and she said, "Can I sit down here?" I was outside of the apartment. And I was questioned as to why is she asking me this question. Then this curiosity took me to designing a bench and installing in front of the popular restaurant Vaishali. And I was questioning whether benches are really public. What would be the context of bench in diverse scenarios of Pune city? And who should make this public infrastructure? Could a group of friends just make a bench out of waste paper tubes and just install it outside Vaishali? And we installed it at 8:15 a.m. in the morning, and no one used it because it looked like an alien object. It looked like to Antop. One person said, you better not keep this here. The police are going to, frisk it away. And then the nearby shopkeeper, he said that, you should put a Puneri party there, ka ithe un basa, or come here and use this. And so then we installed a placard on the bench, and then people actually started using it. And and it was Sunday, people were waiting outside Vaishali, queuing out for a table inside. And then the elderly began to sit on the bench. Then people were curious about the design of the bench. They started clicking photos. And then suddenly, and the curiosity grew. People were just talking and discussing about that alien object. And then the restaurant owner, he came, he called me inside and he said, "Ye aaj to hai idhar, ye kal pata nahi kahan chala jayega." And that is exactly what happened. It was shifted somewhere else, and the day after, I don't know where it disappeared. And maybe this tiny experiment just made me to think that like whenever we are designing urban furniture or movable urban furniture, the stakeholders or people around need to be involved in it. So for that one day, it became a political demonstration of an effort to get people thinking and talking about a bench, a rare pedestrian activity. So after having completed my master's thesis in the informal sector, welfare of construction workers through skill development, I wanted to work hands-on in the field, and due to some constraints, I wasn't able to leave Pune city. I was questioning the implication of the efforts put into graduate studies, and I didn't want the thesis just to be decaying on one library shelf. So then the questions started again in my mind. What comes first, the physical or the non-physical, the built or the unbuilt? And then maybe I was just like, let's just simplify everything. Maybe it's just too simple. I wanted to connect loops, connect theory to practice. I had heard about the Ugly Indians group in Bangalore, where they used to go on spot fixing or cleaning garbage-laden spots in the city and beautifying them. So then a bunch of friends, again, we got together. We selected one by-lane in FC Road next to a chai tapri. We identified one garbage-laden spot, cleaned it, and beautified it. And there were pretty, befores and afters and etc. And then, again, I was questioning myself, we are just shifting garbage from point A to point B. You're going to identify the garbage, clean it, beautify it, and again, after 10 days, there's going to be garbage. But where does this garbage go? And so I just asked around, who collects this garbage? And it led me to the loop connector, our local solid waste manager, whom we call as the waste picker. And then the journey of the rebel, the rebel, she found a thread. And then she started on another path of designing for the informal sector, of designing push carts, sorting sheds, and in-situ basti housing. The push carts for Waste Pickers project was a 9-month-long project. It was funded by TE Connectivity under CSR, and the project was divided into 3 phases, where after each 3 months we would make prototypes and give the waste pickers to use those prototypes. In the process, I was in discussion with Ranjan, MP of NID Ahmedabad, and he advised that design is just one small part of the system and is quite futile unless you know the parts, how the parts fit into the whole and how they all connect. But later on, I felt that in a way, designing pushcarts was about understanding livelihoods, waste management systems, and the government administration networks. deciphering the parts of the whole first. And maybe through designing tools, do we also understand the whole system in the process. So the first phase considered thorough research regarding ergonomic and mechanical aspects. So you had to be in constant interaction with the mechanical engineers. You know, sometimes we feel, you know, architects ko mechanical engineering ke bare mein kya? I mean, you just need, as Laurie Baker says, you just need common sense. So the first part was about understanding the mechanical aspects of the design of push carts, retrofitting existing carts to fit the ergonomic analysis. And then we consulted physicists, mechanical engineers, orthopedic doctors. It included parts of the cart like handle height, type of tires, non-corrosive material for the chassis, ease of lifting and dragging waste fit buckets onto the cart, and analyzing waste pickers working in different topographies, uphill, uneven roads, etc. And it was observed that there were common issues relating to different aspects of the push carts, apart from variations in the topographies around Pune city. So the simplest way to approach the first phase was to retrofit the existing cart, considering lower costs. The surface that received the most wear and tear was the bottom. And so we experimented with aluminum sheets, varied the thickness of the gauge of the mild steel sheets, replaced the sides with perforated CRS sheets to further reduce the weight, increase the depth of the chassis. So when the buckets move, there is less way in the cart. Replacing door hinges with gate hinges, all very simple things. Fixing swivel wheels of different diameters and material, like some in rubber, some in PVC, and with different gauges of brackets. The diameter, width of the main two tires was experimented with, and the bearings also inside were experimented. And then these retrofitted cards were again at the end of 3 months given to the waste pickers to give our honest feedback, and they were very honest with their feedbacks. And then we also developed a bamboo cart, because bamboo is lighter in weight than steel, and this would obviously put less stress on the waste picker to push the cart, and also less stress on the 3 moving parts below. But this was the most expensive option. We also tried collapsible push carts, because usually, passerbys, they complain that, the push carts are taking so much of space. Then we thought of collapsing the push cart to just 2 feet in width. Then we developed an electrical push cart with varying, where the waste picker could, vary the speed, and it could run according to the walking pace of the waste picker. And we designed some, and this was the most favorite amongst the waste pickers about in 2016 or 17. And if it is developed today, I am sure that it would be a much lower cost option given the progress in technology. So this is the honest feedback that we got from the waste pickers. So I'll just...
पण ह्याला जे मेन काय नाही ते सांगतो. एक ब्रेक नाही, आणि चार बाजूला आम्हाला 4 पुटी लावण्याकरता त्याला हुक नाही, आणि पुन्हा जेवणाच्या डबा ठेवण्याकरता एक बॉक्स पाहिजे, आणि गाडीला ब्रेक पाहिजे, आणि ब्रेक असून पुन्हा समोर एक आरसा पाहिजे, म्हणजे पाठीमागून कोणी जर आवाज दिला तर त्याच्यामध्ये दिसू शकते. पुन्हा गाडीला ब्रेक एक पाहिजे, आणि खाल्लं जे आपण ठेवायला केलेलं आहे ती जरा ते खाल्लं जे आहे ते थोडं कमी आहे, तर त्याला हे खाल्लं, हे जे खाली आहे हे थोडं अजून 1 इंच खाली पाहिजे.
So then we developed about 9 prototypes and to the waste pickers. And finally, one prototype was designed where it had all the inputs from the waste picker. So then we had one brake, one space for keeping the dabba, adjustable handle height according to the height of the waste picker, roof for the waste picker, and the buckets that you store, and then having aluminum sheets on all the sides, and tried and tested swivel wheels and the 2 main tires. And then you had rollable curtains on the side, so that after she's done with her work, she could just roll the curtains down, pack it, and no one would keep names ki arey ye idhar kachra dikh raha hai, aap kyun idhar kachra store kar rahe ho, and it would look nice. And then all the drawings of the 9 prototypes were submitted to the PMC. And after a lot of negotiations, about 2,000 or 3,000 carts were made, except the roof. And yeah, that was maybe 50% success that you can say. But still here, the loop could have been completed by giving a like a maintenance schedule for the cart. Then the second part of designing the infrastructure was a mobile or modular sorting shed for about 2 or 3 waste managers. So these sorting spaces are located in different contexts, are outside big housing complexes, outside gated communities, institutions, or outside bastis. And there's this constant interaction between the waste picker and the residents that we don't want you to be sorting waste here. So then we thought of designing a collapsible sorting shed and a movable mobile sorting shed, which looked decent from outside and where the waste picker could securely store her waste, and then which could later on be collapsed at the end of the day. And the waste pickers were pretty happy that this was like the second infrastructure item designed for them. So they did puja and everything. 10 such mobile sorting sheds were installed across the city. And then the organization said, okay, now maybe we could propose designs for temporary sorting sheds. And so as you see here, a space for eating lunch, and then a space for the sorting waste, and then space for storing the waste was provided. And one day it so happened that the municipal corporation was proposing to have an extension for an existing sorting shed for about 30 solid waste managers. And so the organization was like, okay, we could propose a design. PMC was all okay with the design, but they're like, we're not going to build this. So if you're ready, you could do so. So then I had to assume the responsibility as a contractor and to manage the construction process of this sorting shed near Kapil Mallar. So design was very simple, is that you just give, the walls are made up of these fins which look outside, and the person from the outside also is not able to see who's sorting waste inside, while also maintaining plenty of light and ventilation inside the sorting shed so that it doesn't get stuffy. So the effort here was, we just don't provide a patra shed. Maybe we could provide something more, go beyond at every attempt. This culminated into designing in situ basti houses for the waste pickers. One day, Meera Wagmare, she came to me. I had just finished one interior project, and she was domestic help there. And she's like, ताई तुम्ही हे सगळं चांगलं केलंय, तुम्ही माझी एक रूमची खोली येऊन करतात का इंदिरा वसाहतमध्ये. म्हटलं ओके. So she's like, I have 25,000 rupees. I was like, okay, let's try. So, and we had to design that entire interior in 25,000 from leftover scrap, because that was only possible. So again, and one room thing had no light source, just the door. So what we did is that we just made another opening, and we modulated this opening so that she could open it as she wanted with 4 hinges, 4 points for hinges. And then she loved to cook. She's like, Taya, mala ota paije. So then we just reused the sink from the previous interior project and installed it here, and gave her a walk-in wardrobe, this one, with a sliding door. And that was like, and she was very happy with it. And painted with the living room wall with the leftover paint again, and did a nice graphic. And this later on, it transformed into one selfie point for that entire Basti street. Then Pinky Sonavne, a local neighbor waste picker, she came forward and she's like, could you redesign my G+1 home? I was like, okay, let's try. So I have 70,000 rupees. So again, we had to use scrap and leftover material and maybe some alternative construction techniques to get down the costs. And my life has always been a contradiction of a goat sitting on top of a car. Because whenever I visited the basti, I just had that contradiction in my head. And then, so then what we did is that we broke the walls, we broke the slabs so that there was efficient stack ventilation happening in the house, and used jacquard slabs to further, and because we had finished one construction in Otur, and we used that formwork here to build a slab for extension on top, and made the staircase more ergonomic, like reduce the slope of it, the steepness of it, and reused old windows and gotten plenty of light inside that house. And on the right-hand side is the public toilet, and the house is just next to it. And yeah, she was happy with it. And then we did about some 4 or 5 houses in the slums after this, because, and we experimented with construction systems also. So here we had ready-made manufactured ferrocement panels available, so then we just did some reinforcement grid so that they acted as sleeves for these ferrocement panels. So designing for the informal sector was a very personal experience, with daily interaction with the user and understanding the value, monetary and functional, of each material and structural system that goes into place, and the need to balance all of these with a sense of beauty and aesthetic that is possible with scrap or leftover materials and in a limited amount of time. The mind, body, heart, and soul were trained to work in unison. While I was working in the bastis, there was a project for 2 brothers in Otur, which is a small town located about 250 kilometers away from Pune. So the client took me to a small temple there, a Shiv Mandir, and the scale and proportion of the court just fascinated me. It was square, and this was the essence that I wanted to carry further in the design. And then I just roamed the village to find threads in the existing build. The house is, so the house has a stone wall here. So the elder brother stays here and the younger brother stays here. The court is designed for the younger brother, and a deep open veranda is, elder brother, and the deep open veranda is designed for the younger brother. So the design was also influenced by the existing well and a coconut tree next to it. And the house is looking away from the main road and towards the farmland. So it is all about, just to simplify it, because it takes a while to explain the plan of the entire house. So I'm just going to skip through projects. Looking within, looking out, looking away, looking up, and looking down. Again, here I wanted to reduce the embodied energy of the materials. Like we tried different cube tests by adding fly ash and cement mortar, reducing the cements. And so then this is the project where the use of jack arches started. But I was asking contractors, could you build this? And they were like, no. And, they were quoting very high cost for alternative construction. And so again, I had to assume the responsibility of training the masons and, being a contractor myself. So the court becomes a dynamic, unbuilt entity framing the spaces around it. The life within it is as fleeting as the seasons go by. Once the court got built, I felt the effort taken to design was somewhat fulfilled, as the spirit and scale of the neighboring temple court was somewhat achieved. Everyone is looking into the court at different levels while going up and down and just sitting around it. The essence of this house was just this court. So the house has minimal openings facing the main road and is just facing the well behind here and the farmland. And the deep verandas that protect the room from the harsh summer heat. Then at this, in this other project of designing an agro training center in Kambre Bhor, the client came up with a requirement that there is an existing shipping container. It gets just too hot. I don't believe in shipping containers. So it gets just too hot, and we want to build another, like a multi-usable space besides it. And then again I questioned that, okay, fine, I can propose this to the client, but then what about the shipping container which is getting hot? Could we use that? So then the second option was developed that maybe we could cover this shipping container entirely, and then this becomes a multifunctional, multi-usable space. And just a small coat separates the space, and the kitchen and the bedroom on top are shifted there. So during the design of this project, I realized that there is a need to have a space which is called as nothing. Just like the court has no particular denoted function, but is the spirit of the building. In Japanese, it is called as ma, something not required but necessary. Here there is ma at 2 levels, and it's highly moldable and absorbent according to changing requirements of the client, maybe 20 years down the lane. So just a tiny court, a slim court which separates this multifunctional space from the kitchen and the bedroom. And again, it had to be done within limited budget. And the client sent this photo during Diwali where she lit the entire wall and the staircase. The apartments, the apartments at Bugao was a standalone, the apartment at Bugao is a standalone apartment building. And here, I had a strong concept that whatever it may be, I'm not going to use concrete. So, and I mean, people in the past, they built buildings without concrete, so why not just go completely the traditional way? So have 15 feet deep foundation with 4 feet wide stone walls, and just load compressive masonry walls one on top of the other on one hand, and have a staircase separating this, and have a stone tile metal grade slab on the other. So there was architecturally the concept was you have a lightweight structural system facing a very heavy structural system. So again the standalone apartment was somewhat closed from all these three sides because there were buildings going to come on the other 3 sides, and it was facing towards the farm. I kind of designed this myself. It shouldn't be so, you should be consulting structural engineers. And the vault at every level is connected with the composite metal grade stone tile structure. And again, the stilt space, I didn't want that stilt space to be really bland. And just a rampant arch was introduced, and the staircase was designed on top of it. The toilet also was loaded on the compressive vault. With, because of this eccentric loading of the toilet wall, we had to give one reinforced ferrocement, we had to strengthen the wall with reinforced ferrocement. And after all this, my heart was pretty exhausted, and my mind couldn't work further on any design, struggling with issues inside my tiny head. As a kid, I used to always race the colony boys on the cycle, and there were stages in between the previous years where cycle peeped in and looked at me intently. So this time, I just wanted to devote time to her. It's my magic wand. Everything gets resolved on the cycle, exploring places alone. And this pause, it lasted for about 4 years. Then after 4 years, the same client of the Otur house approached, and he said, could you redesign the Shiv Mandir, the temple complex of the village Kapardikeshwar Shiv Mandir? And, okay. So I'm sorry this got tilted. But the complex had no character. It lacked sanctity, it lacked celebration, and it was devoid of any foreground. We did a lot of, historical analysis. We analyzed the journey or the path of we analyzed the journey of the worshipper and etc. And we landed up just again designing, built masses along the journey of the worshipper. But this just didn't go down well. So then one day I just visited Trambakeshwar Mandir, and I was sitting on the boundary wall, and I was just observing the worshippers there. So here you just have the temple in the center people are going round and round, doing pradakshinas around the temple. And the boundary wall was just a relief element for the worshippers after they have done their puja. And the boundary wall also, and so that was it. There was nothing in the temple complex and the boundary wall. And then I just picked up that thread, and the focus here then was just to design the boundary wall of this temple. And the worshippers could, mark their own journeys, are free to mark their own journeys within that temple complex. The section was simple, that there was a wall built to the village, facing to the village, and then the section lowered along to facing the river. And we redesigned this boundary wall. Again, seating areas were designed around this boundary wall. And then, I think this is not seen here. So again, how do you find threads for designing the flooring pattern of the temple? So then just extended the existing grid of the temple columns and the cardinal points of the temple and came up with a flooring pattern. Sorry, it's not seen in the plan. So this is the wall which is facing the village. The axis of the Garbha, and then there's an opening given in the wall with the Garbhagriha opening towards the river. The existing access to the temple complex were redesigned. And so, because again there was limited budget, I felt that the temple wall needed to be porous, but then we couldn't invest a lot of money in dressing the stones. So the idea came up that we could use the existing soft stones of the temple plinth and maybe carve out pointed arches and have these openings so that kids could just, when they step on this last step, they could look out from these openings. And then that became the thread for designing porosity in that stone wall. This is the river side. Again, there is no wall here. This is from where you enter the temple, and this is the history or the wall for celebration or the presentation wall for the temple. And again, it's a very fluid space. Again, because of limited budget, we could only clad the Garbhagriha, and maybe restoring the temple would be in phase 2, so then we just had to think of what color scheme would go along with the temple complex. This took quite a while to figure out. And then the client came up with the idea that these pindis, these stone pindis were lying neglected near the banks of the river. So then the client said, what if we restore them in the temple complex and form a journey of the 12 Jyotirlingas? And then the amphitheater and a space for bhajans and because Otur is known as a cultural town. So the client said that, we need a space for that. And so we designed this amphitheater around existing trees. So these punctures are there in the amphitheater because of the trees. And it becomes it has become literally a community center for entire Otur village. So you have school kids coming in and just resting during breaks or after school. And there is a meditation space provided beneath the steps of the amphitheater. And I feel the basalt gets a different life as rain, or water washes over it. And there were these symbols, these subtle symbols, which were designed in the flooring, which would guide the worshipper around the temple. So nothing ornate or in your face. The walls were designed in such a way that you could use the wall for sitting, to keep something, light it up, celebrate it, and also to keep some plants on top of it. So the creepers, they, in a way, they hug the stone wall. We redesigned the Gomukh. The temple authorities were very adamant of having a stone wall here also, because they like the stone wall facing the river. And I was still insisting that, let's just have shrubs along this side and and have patience, nature will take over. And now you find that, the shrubs are taking over and forming a natural barrier. And there's constant wind flowing also through, from the river direction. And the client keeps on sending photos that, today, there was a really grand birthday celebration. And people use this amphitheater for celebrating anything. So, and maybe more such community spaces need to be designed in the villages. This is a landscape for a film director's farmhouse in Pasrigao, Velle. Okay, now it's not clear. So it's a narrow plot of land where the river is on the south side and a canal flows on the side. And so she wanted dense plantation at the beginning, and she wanted to locate her house near the river and have a writer's cabin somewhere in between. So again, now she wanted, okay, now let's plan for plantation, just, plant trees. We could have just gone ahead with having native trees, medicinal plants, fruit trees. ये सब तो होता है, plant कर देंगे. But then, when you just look out the office window and you look at the landscape and the grid of, or nature's order, you require that you see or you observe that nothing is in a straight line. So how could you plant trees in a straight line? So then we developed a grid, a 6 feet by 6 feet grid. And in that grid, you had one main tree and two shrubs and one flowering tree. And we just rotated that grid such that, conoids or open to sky courts were formed within the trees. And that is how, fractal chaos happened in the landscape. That it seems random, but there is some order behind it. And then you can just, mark your own trail and have pause points along the canal. And the density of the plantation also reduces as you go towards the house. This was the final plan. I don't think so it's that clear here. And the grid helped us to mark a fractal chaos of nature on site. There's dense plantation at the beginning, and then I'm walking towards the river, and the plantation becomes less denser, and then you're just enveloped by the surrounding hills. And the house is located there, and the house would be located there on that barren patch of grassland. And then, so she is like, okay, now let's start with a writer's cabin before, starting with the house. And because she's a film director and she's considered as a master of light in her field, so she's always talking about hard light and soft light. So it's very difficult to design a house for her, because anything harsh, she's going to say that, nay, this doesn't suit with me. And then she always talks about flowers, her deep connection with water, and seeing fireflies at night. And there is this particular tree on the side beyond which, so we've stopped all the dense plantation till this tree, and she calls it as the twin flame tree, because there are two trees growing with each other. And so the initial intuition was to locate the writer's cabin just facing this tree. And the intuition was to have a stone wall, a sloping roof, and just a loft. This is a very simple thing, nothing fabulous about it. But it led us to the study of the modular. So it led us to the study of the modular. And so this was the first option. And the bed was here, the writer's desk was here, a toilet and a small kitchenette. But then once we studied the modular and we put it on the grid, it somewhat started having rhythm. And maybe on 8th August 2023, I started knowing about modular in depth. And then we just marked this on 1:1 scale in our small office balcony. And I asked them to act it out. How are you going to, do this? I mean, live in this space. And we sent this scene to the film director. And this is the final layout for the writer's cabin, where this is her parents are also going to stay with her. So this gets converted into a bedroom at night. Her writer's desk is facing the landscape. A small staircase goes above, a small kitchenette here, and your toilet there. And so once we had sent her the model, she always loved this loft space. So she emotionally collected that loft space to her hiding from her mom when she was young. And we just gave a small opening in the roof for light. We had done a tiny cabin before, and so this became a study of comparisons of scale in both these designs. And now we are still trying to figure out as to how do you close this openness of the veranda? What do you do there? Do you have another build? And maybe the unbuilt solves a lot of issues for us. Is that maybe why not the landscape just have a mound here enclosing the veranda? This is still in process. I don't know how long this study is going to go. This is the twin flame tree and the house facing there and the views here. This is an agro training center in Katigaon, Solapur. It started about 4 years ago. So then again, once there are sites outside of Pune city, you don't know the existing build. So what you do is you just roam around the village and try to find threads and understand the existing build. So in Solapur, because of the harsh summer conditions, you have smaller courts. You don't have one big court. You have smaller courts as you go deep within the house. And so that was our simple concept for this training center, that you have a public court, then a semi-public court, then followed by 2 private courts. And there were these 3 big tamarind trees. And so the house had to be, opening towards the tamarind trees and the farm on the side. And in this project, so I don't know what to call this project, because then the client has been changing her requirements till now, because it is also an agro training center and also a space to reside. And so I feel that the requirement is highly fluid. And also the costs were reduced in a way that we had less verandas. So you have the training hall, the food processing unit, and only the kitchen and the bed are enclosed by 4 walls. And now we're planning to have shallow water bodies all around the structure, so then there's constant evaporative cooling in the harsh summers. Just the study models. And we had to have a flat terrace on top because of the nature of activities happening on the farm, that they dry grains, they dry different vegetables on the terrace. But then we tried to calculate the embodied energy of the material used. So the jacquard system was the most efficient system. So it also provides insulation from the harsh summer heat. And cost-wise also it was pretty efficient. So this is the entrance, the public court. This semi-public court, so when the vault comes on, the vault here is located in such a way on the south side. So after the noon sun, this court gets shaded after 12 o'clock. And this double height looks towards the farm. And there are no walls defining the training hall or the food processing unit. The walls are just provided where they are required, and the spaces become even more fluid and are articulated by, say, one beam and the arch. This is still under construction. And then during a recent visit to Japan, I was really in awe of a spiral brick wall used there in the constructed in the 18th century for a tunnel. So, and this is the most stable way that you could arrange the bricks, and they are all interlocked. So then we were trying to figure out as to whether we could replicate the same system of arranging the bricks in the wall that we're doing here. Again, you could easily like modulate this on the computer, fabricate it and 3D print it. But then this is located in Katigao, Solapur. And you have to make processes simpler for on-site masons for better accuracies hands-on. So we were trying, different things in the office to map a construction sequence on-site. Then we had the opportunity of designing the Ozar temple complex, It didn't happen because we didn't want to compromise on one construction detail. But nevertheless, would like to share this. So the Ozar temple is located here, and they have reclaimed this portion of the land, and they just want to go on, reclaiming more and more. Like, let's idhar ye dal dete udhar aur bada ho jayega. And then what they did was they just laid tar here, and so it gets extremely hot for the worshippers in any season, like because of exposed tar. And there were different, there was always this human nature conflict happening there. So then we had to identify different user groups, identify the natural site conditions, like you have sinking of the land, because it is reclaimed land, sedimentation, the biological oxygen demand, the microclimate, stabilizing the river fauna, the sun angle, the air breeze, etc. And all issues and requirements were identified. And we tried to map the path of the devotees, the shops, the villagers. So the temple town is here, and the devotees come from here. And so there's this constant, disorganized movement, in a way you can call it, happening. So then we identified these design layers that, design had to justify everything: ecological, cultural, historical, and psychological. So then we identified these 5 axes of water, sense, fire, air, earth, and just interspersed these with wetlands. So again, the play of the built and the unbuilt. And we had to find a balance between human activity, which is also a cultural heritage, and the ecological issues of restoring ecosystems. So this was the final plan for the proposal. The temple complex, the Sabha Mandapa, which is the open Sabha Mandapa, which is facing the temple complex. And so this main axis takes you to the Nirmalaya Ghat, where you can dispose the Nirmalaya in this ghat, which is barricaded on all the sides. And then this is filtered, and the garbage and the Nirmalaya is removed. And the villagers also could use this ghat for bathing. And then a connection was established to the other ghat, which is an existing ghat, and this was redesigned. This is called as the Ganga Ghat, or the Ganga Aarti Ghat. And then we had to relocate an existing Shiv Mandir and call this as the fire axis, with the Shiv Mandir looking towards the Shikhara of the temple. And we provided these open spaces because there are always these melas happening in the temple complex. So intently provide these open spaces to be used in multiple ways. And another ghat called the air, which is used for boating, and a Dashakriya ghat, which is the axis of the earth. So this was the proposal. So again, they wanted covered parking, and it's useless to have wasted material on top of cars. So then we wanted to use that first floor for as a recreational space, or where you could also have cafes and interspersed with trees. This is the axis of fire. And you have plazas looking towards the waterfront, and a small pathway connecting these ghats. The existing Ganga Ghat was just redesigned by having these pause spaces on the sides and defining it with this entrance. Again, a very lightweight parking structure. And people are fascinated with the term eco park, but the actual the concept behind it was for not to build anymore. And when we proposed this project to the client, they were like, okay, we are expecting this to be really high cost. But then when we told them the cost, they were surprised. They were like, this cannot be true. Because the unbuilt really solves a lot of issues in design. It seems to be built, and this was a small amphitheater for the local village panchayats to take place. The axis of fire. So you step down. The Shiv Mandir is located at a lower level near the water. So you're stepping down towards, and as you're entering, so this becomes a space of celebration, just as observed in the previous Otur temple design. And there is no fixed entry provided here. There are multiple entries, so you can take multiple entries to go below. And there were these 8 alcoves designed to symbolize the Ashtavinayak. And a celebratory wall designed that could be lit up and celebrated during different festivities. Now, I'd like to share this journey of working with wood. I remember that in my first year, we were asked to design a door handle. And I had this idea of designing a door lock in wood, is that as you open, the door lock becomes a part of the door handle. I still have that with me, and I'm not able to resolve it because probably I don't have the skill set of working hands-on. So it's easy to scratch upon, but difficult to shape wood for its proposed functional use. And the way wood could be used is judged by the variety of tools used on its surface. For example, sesame wood, if you try to use a hand plane on sesame wood, it would just not let you use any hand plane on it. Before understanding wood as a material in detail and the tools used to shape it, I was trying my sketchy intuition to join 2 pieces together. The result also was very sketchy. So here, there were packing boxes like redesigned to have design a table, and this came out to be a really heavy dining table. And then I was trying to repurpose old table and window frames, like these small steps which go to a loft of an interior project. And then repurpose some centering ply to design shelves so that this could just be done in 2,000 or 3,000 rupees. And wood has been with me since the first studio. So this was just a 1-room first design studio. And I used old doors here, and there was this collapsible table, and I put these wooden shavings inside the glass of the wooden table. And then again in the second studio, I realized that pine wood flooring, it expands. So then why not have lipping putties between 2 pine wood surfaces. Then I was trying to resolve the expansion of unseasoned pine wood by overlaying joints with teak wood lipping putties. And then even was trying to trying to tell wood, okay, this is how you need to behave. But wood was saying, no, I'm not going to behave in that way. I'm going to crack. I'm going to expand. And I tried to use mango wood for a bench, and it just went on cracking. And later on, to stabilize it, it just drank liters and liters of polish for it to become stable. So unless you understand at a cellular level the nature of wood, the plane on which you apply the force and the tool with which you apply the force, one would really be using nails and Fevicol, quote unquote, in general. And here there was again an requirement for designing a trestle table. So where again to get down the cost, I just randomly selected salwood. अरे हाँ cheap है तो use करते हैं. And I started turning it, and again it started breaking. And then finally I had to shift to Burma teak. And this is where I started understanding in depth the grains of wood. Products take you through the design process at the minutest of levels of scale, context, use, skills, to the behaviors of 0.05 mm, because that is how Takami used to tell us. Takami, how much this is? Like 0.00, he's like, we chhod dete. Then while through these years, and they forced you to think at that level when in search for truth. While through these years I've inquired into context of use and scale of design working with wood, a material, as Takami Kawai says, is alive even after it's cut, has led me to inquire more about tools used for working on the material, as if they have a soul of their own. And so this time, when there was an order for designing a bench, instead of starting design on the table, I went to the market and I first started identifying wood. I tried to chip it, I tried to chisel it, tried to scrape it, to understand how alive it was. Like, what is wood saying, Kya bolta hai tu? And more important was to find a carpenter who knew the importance of working with tools and the nature of wood. So I was searching a lot, and this only happens when the carpenter is making his own tools. And so we met Belaram Sutar, who comes from a lineage of Rajasthani carpenters, and he's not satisfied with the tools available in the market. And I was like, yes. So one day I was just, sitting in the office, and this carpenter came and he was discussing the design with the assistant. And he was talking about something, and I was like, yes, at that moment I realized that maybe this is the guy from whom, we could learn. And all these tools are designed by him, from scratch. And then we came up with and this is the bench and the daybed, rosewood. And since then, I've just been in love with rosewood. Once you inquire about the essence, you need to do nothing more. Details evolve and they flow. One doesn't have to force one's mind on that object, because you know the essence of wood. Now, more importantly, I have to devote time to take up the tools and craft objects myself, to understand the soul of the material and its condition in depth. And this would have not been possible without a team. And so I could say that the thesis of welfare of construction workers through skill development that was completed in 2013, I think, is somewhat 60 or 70% fulfilled. And this is the team: Amar, Shiva, Monu, Santosh, Ramesh, Sona, and Gangabai. Amar and Shiva in the audience today. And these are the ones who make beautiful spaces possible and know the heart of the material more than the architects. And so this has been the journey, and now I've realized that it's more inwards. And maybe एक जिंदगी भी कम पड़ जाएगी खुद को ढूंढते. Thank you.
I guess, wow. It surely is interesting and a very diverse array of works. And I'm sure all of us want to know more and want to understand the process, but we'll get back to it further in the program.